Thank you for joining and welcome to another episode with Azim Sahir, a human capital specialist who has designed this podcast to inspire people to live meaningful lives and to pursue their passion. This is Season 8. In this podcast, Azim gives a laid-back look at the important aspects of life and business through the lens of emotional intelligence. You will learn how emotional intelligence can influence your success in both personal and professional life. You will hear key life lessons and tips from prominent personalities, business leaders, entrepreneurs, EI practitioners, and executive coaches from all over the world. You can also watch the video version of this podcast on his YouTube channel. So sit back, relax with a cup of coffee, and let's get to the show. AI Cafe with Azim.
In a world of information overload, noise and hype, stories can cut through the clutter, get the message across, and influence people. Leaders are influencers. They influence people. Stories can get you jobs, customers, partners, and investors, as explained in the book Unleash the Power of Storytelling: Win Hearts, Change Minds, Get Results by Rob Biesenbach. A very warm welcome to the show. This is EI Cafe with Azim Season 8, and I'm your host, Azim Saeed, a human capital specialist, Lego Serious Play Facilitator, ICF certified PCC level coach, an emotional intelligence and emotional culture practitioner. Here we are again for another interesting topic, a 30 minutes of valuable learning. Yes, you are the introduction. It is about storytelling. We know that everybody is talking about storytelling. Everybody is encouraging storytelling, but what is the power of stories and how to make an impact with it? To have this conversation, I have a fantastic individual all the way from flying from US. Let me give a quick introduction of him. He is a public speaking expert, retired US Air Force and instructional design guru. He's on a mission to empower speakers, trainers, and leaders with the resources they need to engage from every stage. I did mention about one of his article. He's mentioning connecting human beings. Ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome David Doeeier.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Azim. Thank you so much. This is such a treat for me to be with you today.
David, thank you very much. Very much. It's an honor and a pleasure to host you in the cafe. As I mentioned before the recording starts, I've been in one of your sessions and I've been following you on LinkedIn, and I'm learning from the content you share. And every moment, I just keep writing and try to reflect and try to apply when I go in terms of facilitation purposes. Thank you very much for giving that wonderful inspiration. So, David, storytelling. I think this has been talk of the town. People has been talking a lot. People are encouraging, and I believe you're a Toastmaster also, right? So I think they do a fantastic job in terms of developing people. And one of my podcasts, I had a CEO from Sri Lanka. He mentioned leaders need to be storytellers, right? And beyond that, I'm just curious, David. I'm just curious to know, how come from flying to presenting? How did you end up here?
I guess you're referring to my time in the Air Force. Well, I was not a pilot in the Air Force. There were many, many other jobs other than being pilots in the Air Force.
Right.
However, I did work around aircraft,
Right.
and worked with cargo and passengers and baggage and all types of anything and everything that would fit on an aircraft. But the way that I ended up where I'm at was through the Air Force. I became a trainer in 1995 with the Air Force, and that's when I started learning the craft of presenting, writing training, delivering training on a daily basis. Prior to that, I had some theater background. I had radio broadcasting background.
Wow.
But over these past 30 years, I've learned a lot, and I continue to learn about the craft of training and engaging audiences.
So from crafting aircraft paper to crafting leaders and the presenters. So it's an amazing journey. So thank you very much for sharing that. I think it's going to be a wonderful experience, getting into the training element. What was the experience about? Because I have gone through the similar, because I've worked in sales and marketing and human resource, banking, and now, engaging people, inspiring people, delivering sessions and facilitating. It's amazing, Jenny. How is your experience on that particular part, this shift?
When I first became a trainer, I didn't know what training was all about. I thought it was just standing up in front of a group of people and just talking and hoping that they learned something. But it was within the first couple of years that it really struck me that training is more than just talking. It is using stories, using analogies, using examples, getting people to get their hands on it so they can actually work with it. And it's all about getting that message to stick. So that was what I had to learn the hard way when I first started in training. It's more than talking. It's about stories, analogies, and examples and engagement.
Right. So I really love the part, getting it stuck on people's mind. Right. Now, this is where I think storytelling is been amazing methodology or amazing tool, and it has been widely spoken, right, David? And at the same time, I just curious to know, like, why does stories make an impact on another person? What is in it? How does it connect?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are, I always, when I talk to folks about public speaking and they ask me, what are the top 3 things that everybody must remember to give a good presentation? And the number 1 is know your audience. Number 2 is storytelling. And number 3 is end with a impactful conclusion. So why is storytelling so important? Well, number 1, if someone is telling a story correctly, then the listener should be able to see that in their mind. Now, if I'm telling a story about my family, but I'm incorporating enough color, enough examples, incorporating enough wording in there, you should be able to see my family. Now, you may not see them exactly the same way I do, but you see them in the car, the red car, we're going to the amusement park. You see all of those things in your mind. Another thing that storytelling is able to do, it's able to create an emotion. So if I was to tell an emotional story, or if I was to tell a story about a client who had a lot of successes, or a client that struggled through their business, I would want to be able to explain that in a way that you as a listener can also feel that. That is what's going to stick with the audience. Wow,
brilliant. Because I love the fact when you are just talking about the red car, the amusement, it really, I'm creating a visual on my mind, a red car and an amusement. And I hope our listeners also, while they're listening, they would have got the red car. Couple of days back, I did interview Todd Churches, who's a visual leadership element. So he was talking about visual communication, and this one of the methodology he was talking about storytelling. So I really did understand how it emotionally connect. So on that note, how important to get this connection done at the beginning itself, David, with stories? Because I know first 2-3 minutes so important when you're presenting or when you're speaking in front of a huge audience, because that's going to really attract. how important that connection is, and how can you bring that important? How do you start the story?
Right. Right. So there's probably 9 million ways that you can start the story. However, every single one of those 9 million ways all have the same objective. They need to immediately engage the audience. I like to start my presentations with a question. How many people here have the fear of speaking in public? How many people here present on a regular basis? Some sort of question that's going to immediately get my audience to lean in, to listen. It's also a way for me to gauge my audience, to understand their current understanding of the topic. For example, if I ask the question, how many people here make presentations? And nobody raises their hand. So now I have an audience full of people that nobody makes presentations. So now on the fly, I have to now recraft my message that's going to be engaging for people that don't make presentations. So I like to ask a question up front. So to answer your question, 9 million ways to open, but the one objective for those 9 million ways, immediately engaging your audience.
So correct me if I'm wrong. Is that the way to develop the curiosity on the audience side? So what I'm trying to say is, can curiosity be the trigger you want to, pick it up from the question you're going to ask at the opening itself? I mean, what is David asking? Why is David asking this question from us? Is that curiosity we are trying to bring in the opening of the speech?
It could be. It could be curiosity. You could give some sort of you could even have an image on your PowerPoint that is so compelling. It could be very graphic, this image that is going to get people like, wow, it really brings them in. It could be a statistic of some sort. Did you know that 93% of your message comes from your nonverbals? And you could use some examples. So yes, definitely getting that curiosity. The objective is getting them to lean in, to want to know more.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. Let's come to a corporate context, David. We all know that leaders who build strategies, and they do present the strategies to their people, and they want them to understand and execute. Now, there are different ways of doing this methodology. Either we put a presentation and start explaining about it, or we just send the presentation out, or we do an activation. There can be anything. In an organization perspective, how can we bring this storytelling technique into the meetings? Because most of the meetings are boring, and you very rarely see people are engaging because they engage with the phone while the meeting goes, because there's no curiosity or interesting fact. So my question is, how do we bring to our meetings and presentation in our corporate environment?
That's a great question. So what I would say is one of the first things, and this is something that gets missed, I feel, in meetings and definitely in trainings, is setting the stage. What are we doing? Why are we doing this? Why are we having this meeting? If I'm running the meeting, what is my responsibility? What do I expect from everybody else that's in this room here today? And I want to value all of everybody's input. I want to create a safe environment for people to be vulnerable and to express openly how they feel in that meeting. It's not me dictating what has to be done. Certainly a leader at times may have to do that, but you want to include, you want to still create that safe environment. So I would say, to answer your question, is right up front, setting that stage. What are we doing? Why are we doing it? How are we going to get there? What is my role in this meeting? What is your role in the meeting? Setting that stage up front.
All right. So you really triggered an interesting perspective for me. You did mention about making other people feel, making other people engage. Now, I'm not quite sure how you're going to get this particular question, but How important emotional intelligence in this particular process?
So, yes. So now that's another great question. So this is getting into an area where knowing the different communication styles of everybody that's in that meeting. There are tools to help you learn this. And one of those tools is called DISC, DISC, something that I've worked with for a number of years. And anybody can Google DISC personality assessment. And you will learn that everybody is going to have their own unique communication style. And as a leader, I think it's extremely important for that leader to know the differences of everybody in that room. I'm sure that you've been in a number of meetings. People that are on this call have been in a number of meetings. You always have that person that's the chatterbox, the person that never shuts up. And then you have on the other side of that, you have the person that never talks. And so there are perceptions about these different personality types. The person who talks all the time, people say, oh, will this guy ever shut up? And then the person who never talks, people may perceive them as being very shy or not a team player, but they could be completely wrong. So my point is is understanding the different communication styles in that room, and that leader has to be able to speak to the listening style of each of those communication styles.
So what you're trying to say is leader or the manager or the speaker need to really adjust his or her style according to the people in the audience.
Right. It's not changing my style.
Adjusting.
It's kind of meeting them halfway.
Yeah. All right. Brilliant. Thank you. Now, we did talk about EQ or EI, emotional intelligence. Now I'm coming to the perspective of artificial intelligence. Right. Now we have seen, David, artificial intelligence, of course, a trending topic. Even this particular season, I'm just linking artificial intelligence already because that's a bit of trending word in Google as well. We're talking about ChatGPT, Brad AI, a lot of things are coming up. Now, I've seen a lot of people using artificial intelligence for the presentation purpose, or create some videos, have that person, talk, the verbal component come attracted, and voiceovers are given, because you're a voiceover artist also, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
How these things connect? How can we use AI in our storytelling techniques, or is it against us?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I use it a lot. I use it for my help with writing my posts on LinkedIn. I use it to come up with ideas for posts. I use both ChatGPT and I also use Jasper. I have used it to create a speech. I haven't given the speech yet, but it has helped me to write a speech. Luckily, AI has not gotten to the point yet where AI can get up in front of people and actually give that presentation. So definitely we can use it to help us craft a speech or to help us with our research on a speech, but we humans are still going to have to get up, make that presentation, and we need to be able to engage the audience. You can't just get up and just read it and talk to your audience. So luckily, it's ChatGPT is not going to put me out of business.
I think that's the fear, because that is the mental model created by social media. You can be replaced, isn't it?
Right. But it can't replace that public speaker.
Because it has a lot of feeling important component. There's a lot of stories, like very authentic. David, I'm really curious. But the word I said, authentic. Now, this is a question I have. Storytelling, does it need to be really authentic, or is it just a story we have created just to pass a message?
Well, that's another great question. I think that every story has to have an objective. Now, I've taken some stand-up comedy classes, and one of the things that I've taken away from stand-up comedy is that everything, and also from Toastmasters, when you talk about impromptu speaking, it does not all have to be 100% true. So by what I like to do incorporating a story is first understand what is my objective. That when I get to the end of that story, what is it that people should feel or know better or understand better? But along the way in that story, I may incorporate 2 or 3 different events and incorporate that all into one. There's nothing wrong with that. It's the same thing with writing a joke or putting together a stand-up comedy routine, putting bits and pieces of a trip to Disneyland and a trip to the pool and visiting my mother on Mother's Day and putting that all into one story, that it's all part of one thing. There's nothing wrong with that. Was that what your question was?
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. Because the whole idea is, people are listening to it. People believe in you when you start telling the story, right? So I just want to know the story is what we are going to create. I know the message is important because that the message is going to drive on the whole week or the month or the year, because that's how we get inspired or get motivated. But I think you really clear the mind. Is the story need to be really authentic or true enough to tell the story, or can we based on the outcome of the speech, can we build a story? That I think you did answer the questions. Thank you very much.
So yeah, it definitely needs to be believable. I can't go ahead and tell a story.
Last
month when I was on the moon, it needs to be believable.
Absolutely. You can't say next week I'm going to Mars and I'm going to check whether we
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos telling yes, that can be believable. They've sent it. So right. So thank you for sharing that. So David, we are coming latter part of our conversation. Here the thing I just want to out from you, right? For listeners' purpose, I know you did mention about getting the stories out. So what are the key elements we need to look after when we build stories to create that impact?
So in business stories, I like to talk about 3 parts. And those are, number 1, what was the problem? If we're going to be talking about a client, what was the problem that the client had? What was the solution that you were able to provide that client? And then finally, what was the outcome that the client was able to experience? Another general rule of these stories that they should be short. You don't have to go into a lot of detail. For example, last week when I was working with my client Azim, wait a minute, it wasn't last week. It was it was 2 weeks ago. It was 2 weeks ago, and no, wait a minute, it wasn't Azim. It was Paul. We don't need to have all of that information, and it doesn't need to talk about Azim's. Go into details about the business. How long have I known Azim? Going into a lot of detail, keeping it very short. What was the problem? What solution did you provide? And finally, what was the outcome?
Brilliant. Thank you very much, David. I think it does make sense when you say, what is the problem? So that is a context of a business perspective. If you come out of corporate, let's say invited for a special guest as a keynote speaker, how do you build the story there? Is it the same process, or you?
It's going to be different. Now you're starting to get into an area that's a little outside, because I'm all about designing business presentations.
All right.
And so there you're starting to get outside, but the similarity is going to be that what is the objective?
All right.
When you get to the end of that story, what is it that people should have learned or have experienced or felt about that story? And when I evaluate Toastmasters stories and presentations, what I find a lot of times is that people are giving way too much detail, or they're not giving enough detail. So I will answer your question this way when it comes to stories. And I don't have the right answer of where to start, but these are some things to think about inside the story. And that is, somebody says, yesterday I got in the car and I went to the store and I bought a loaf of bread. Okay, that's one way of saying that story. Yesterday, after I finished my lunch that I had with my wife, and while we were sitting and having our lunch at the dinner table, our cat jumped up on the table and spilled my glass of milk. Well, after we cleaned up the milk, I was able to finally get into my red car, start up the engine, turn on the radio, and then, and go from there to continue that story about going to buy the loaf of bread. And here, what I call that is adding color to your story. It's not just saying, yesterday I met with my aunt and we had lunch. Well, tell us a little bit about your aunt. What are some things about your aunt that really stand out to you? Maybe it's her perfume. Maybe she always wears the color pink. Every time I see her, she's got this air of confidence about her. She always has to sit at the same table because of this reason. Give us some color. So now we can get a better job of visualizing your aunt having lunch with her.
So here's my key takeaway on this. Storytelling is about creating that visual element in another person's mind so they start connecting with the speaker. Correct, David?
Yeah, because my objective is I want you to see my aunt in your head. I want you to see us sitting at that table. I want you to see that food that's in front of us. I want you to experience that conversation. I want you to emotionally connect to that conversation, because that's the glue. That's the glue that's going to stick in your head.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. I think plenty of golden nuggets on this particular episode. Those who are leaders, those who are involved in presenting, involved in meetings, and not even leaders, and as a normal general human beings, this can be a perfect tool for us to create an impact on other person, to get connected, get engaged. So that, ladies and gentlemen, that's the time what we have for today. My key takeaway is engage, bring stories to create visuals. I think our audience have got plenty of takeaways for today. I hope them, and we encourage them to use the power of storytelling in their day-to-day lives, especially in a corporate context. Pass that message across. So thank you, David. Thank you very much for putting out this wonderful content for us. Of course, you can get connected to David via his social media. Believe me, by reading his articles or the notes, you're going to learn a lot, because that's what I do also. So David, thank you very much for the content. And of course, you can log on to www.presentyourwaytosuccess.com to get huge amount. It's a gold mine, by the way. Get access it. You can start learning into it. And all the links will be available on the podcast note. So David, thank you very much for your valuable time spending in the cafe and inspiring people, sharing your experience and techniques and thoughts on power of storytelling.
Thank you, Azim. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this podcast of EI Cafe with Azim. We sure do hope you enjoyed it, and if you have any questions, please do reach out. If you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe to the show that is available on all major podcast platforms, so you're notified when a new episode is posted. Please rate, review, and leave a comment, and share it with your friends. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you're leaving with some great insights that can help you in your daily life. Follow Azim on social media and do write to us on topics and experts you'd like to hear from, and we will try to get them on board. Goodbye for now, until we meet again on another episode of EI Cafe with Azim.